family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name is Betty, and today I'm joined by Carol. And Carol has an amazing story of a walk-in soul experience. And I'm really excited for your willingness to serve our community at IANDS today, Carol. I'm going to toss it right over to you to start sharing about your experience.
Okay, thank you, Betty, because I am excited as well. This is a coming out story for me. I have yet to really speak about my experience to many people, hardly anybody for that matter. And so I will start with the extreme emotion that I had to address this. I almost cut out because I recognized to speak about a walk-in experience is a choice. It's an emotional choice. And that was very hard for me to do and even harder for me to speak about. Whereas a near-death experience, it's something that happens to somebody. And God knows I chose to do this. So I will start with, I guess, my backstory. And from there, I'll go into the actual event. And from there, I will move into what I'm dealing with since then. And we'll go into the Q&A. Okay, so my backstory. First, I'll start with that I was born and raised in New York City. I'm in Silicon Valley for the past 42 years. And I've been wondering why up until recently. And it's going through this backstory of mine that I recognize why I'm here. Truly why I'm here, I think, anyway. So first, I'll start with my backstory. I was born dyslexic with the gift of dyslexia. And over time, I have gotten to realize the gift of it. However, in early days, it certainly was less than a gift. And I'll just identify a couple of instances which kind of set the tone for my emotional development as I grew older. Because I'll just throw in, I did walk in when I was 42 years old. And I'm 83 now. So it's been like half my life. And so doing life regression work when I was older, once I was in the new energy that I hold, I had the opportunity to reflect back to my first recollection of life. And that's when I was about 2 years old. I saw, I envisioned and remembered. I was 2 years old, about that, sitting in my high chair. My mother was speaking to my father in front of me. And my mother was telling my father that it looks like I'm going to be left-handed. At which point he got furious. Mind you, keep in mind, this is like the early 1940s. He got very upset with my mother and said, make sure that she becomes right-handed. You take care of that. And of course, I didn't have thinking process, but what I perceived in that moment as I reflected back on it, I recognized I was doing something wrong. I was doing something that displeased my father. My mother had to make sure I pleased my father. And that became sort of my theme for life as I reflect upon it. A, I don't please people. B, I do the wrong thing. And C, I have a challenge in men. Beginning of my life. Okay, so fast forward to I was about, I guess about 9 years old or so. I wanted to take art lessons because I never did any. Oh, I missed one thing. From that day on, from when I was 2 years old, my father never called me Carol. He always called me Lefty. And so I grew up with the name of Lefty. I never did anything right. And the dyslexia didn't help. By the time I was 7 or 8 and everybody started to read in school, I couldn't read. It was too confusing for me. I never did learn how to read. Eventually I did, but I'll tell you that in a moment. So that was another thing that I didn't do right. And I didn't fit in. And I started to feel I didn't have the words then as I have now. I started to feel less than, like there was something wrong with me at a very young age. I think it went back to when I was 2 years old, like there was something wrong with me. I kept going like this throughout the years. When I was about 9 years old, I wanted to take art lessons. I thought maybe I could do that because I like to color. I had an art teacher. On the third lesson, I produced a drawing, a still life, and I was very proud of it. And my mother thought it was wonderful. And she said, show it to Daddy when you come home, when he comes home. So I quickly showed it to Daddy when he came home. And he looked at it and he said, Carol, did you do that? And I said, yes, yes. And he looked at me and he was angry and he pointed his finger at me and he said, you know that you shouldn't lie. And then he didn't speak to me for 6 weeks because I lied. He thought I lied. So I immediately stopped the art lessons. I didn't do that right. And again, I was being reinforced of how I didn't do things right. This went on lots of little incidents where I never did anything right. And lefty. We always were calling me lefty. When I was 17 years old, somehow I got through high school only because I listened. I listened. I could remember things. I didn't take notes. I just listened. But we had to take a test in New York City, a Regents exam. And in my history Regents exam, I remembered that I forgot all the dates and the specific names. So I sat down with my history book, and for the first time at 17 years old, I taught myself how to read. Up until that point, in my family, I was considered stupid, dumb. She can't read. I was the oldest of 3 children. They could read. They took different languages. I couldn't even master English. So I took the exam. Interestingly enough to me, on the exam, I saw the answers in my head on the page that I read in the book. And I could see where on the page the words were and what page number it was. So I passed the test, got my high school diploma, and didn't know what to do. I was trained for the ballet from 7 to 17. And my husband, well, he wasn't my husband then, but I met my husband when I was 15. He was an artist. I was a dancer. We planned to get married. And after I finished high school, I thought I was going to continue on to go into the company, the dance company, the ballet company. And he gave me an ultimatum. He said, either you choose the dance or you choose me. And at the time, I couldn't imagine life without him. So I let go of the ballet. I went into deep depression. Eventually, we got married. And that didn't work out the way I thought it would. And I'm getting a little mixed up here, but I should say that when I was 11 years old, I forgot that. When I was 11 years old was the first time I thought about suicide. And I met a nice boy at the time, so I dropped suicide and started to hang around with the guy. In my marriage, my first marriage, he was an artist and I wanted to take sculpting lessons. So I started to go to sculpting school and I really designed. Okay. And I came home after the first class because we had to draw hands. And I never looked at my hands enough to draw them. And I asked him about, how does he look at hands and how does he deal with the drawing of it? And he looked at me and he said, "What, are you stupid?" Again, pain in my heart. I didn't do something right. I was thought of as less than. And this continued for a while. Within a short period of time, I tried to kill myself again. It didn't work. I was saved. So I couldn't even kill myself. We were going into a divorce a year later, and I tried to take my life for a second time. And that time, my parents stepped in and they put me into a mental institution for the weekend to dry out. So again, I couldn't even take my life. It just didn't work. I didn't even know how to do that. Eventually, I got divorced, I got remarried. And in that interim, I noticed that I was very drawn to strong, powerful, successful, dynamic men. And at some occasions, I would go someplace with someone, and it was like he was wearing me. He was walking me through a room, showing me off. It was like I wasn't even a person. I was something to be worn. I finally got married to the same kind of man. And within a short period of time, I recognized he was not faithful. And at that point, I had very little self-confidence, if any. I didn't tell anybody for the longest time that he was unfaithful. And it was an emotionally draining situation. It went on for years because I was always afraid to leave him. Eventually, I got an undergraduate degree. I got an MBA. And every time I got a degree, I thought, oh, now I'm going to leave him. And now I'm going to leave him. I never had the courage. I was always afraid that how will I survive by myself? Because I learned in retrospect, I had very low self-esteem. And one day he at age 43, he retired. And he said he was going to take a European trip for a few months by himself. And that knocked me out because I knew what he did, how he ran after women here. Now he wanted to go do it in Europe by himself. I never said anything to him that I knew what he was doing. And I was devastated. He bought a new car for me. It was a stick shift car. He drove me to the airport. He got out of the car, gave me a kiss on the cheek goodbye, said he'd call me sometime. Maybe I'll meet him in Europe at some point. And he left me with the stick shift to drive out of the airport. It was a very busy airport. I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. He just showed me driving there. By God's good grace, I got out of the airport and I was literally in tears, emotionally distraught. I couldn't believe that this actually happened, that he was actually leaving me and going off like this. And I got out of the airport. I found the first place I could park so I could get out of the car and just get myself composed. And I found an empty parking lot outside of an empty motel. I parked the car, I got out of the car, and I started crying, and the crying became intense, and I started howling of pain, emotional, deep-seated pain. And I fell to the ground. I fell to the concrete. My knees were on the concrete. I was hysterical. I was howling at this point. And all of a sudden, within a moment, I shifted. I forgot to mention, months before this, someone had told me about Ruth Montgomery's book, Strangers Among Us, and I should read the book because it spoke about how to do a walk-in experience. At that point, it was called Walk-in Experience, 1982, for people who were in emotional agony. Well, I've read the book. I prepared myself, never thinking that it would actually happen to me. In that moment, howling on the concrete, in a given moment, I felt a flash, like I was another person. I knew it was the walking. And I knew my whole body felt different. My whole emotional demeanor was like another person. I was another person. I had an appointment that night to meet a friend for dinner because I wanted to arrange something so when I left the airport, I'd have someplace to go. I got in the car. By some grace, I drove to where I had to go. I couldn't park it though. I remember I had to ask a man on the street to please park the car for me. And he did. I went to my friend, didn't tell her what just happened. She was on her first martini. And I just walked in, and there I was, looking exactly as I always looked. Nothing changed, and yet my life changed. I was with her. I don't remember how I was with her or what I did. I remember going home. I remember looking around the house like everything was brand new. And that was the beginning of the walking. That was 42 years ago. I never told anybody at first. In fact, I don't remember telling anybody for a while, a long one. It's like I did something weird. People thought I was a little off center anyway. And the challenge of the walk-in that I have discovered over the past 42 years, not having anyone to share it with, to get support from, was the integration of the new energy with the original energy, soul. So that's what really brought me to IANDS. I was finally ready to connect with someone who had a walk-in experience. I wonder what it was like for them. And it's just recently, I went through a lot of soul searching. I went through becoming a PhD in transpersonal psychology. I went through teaching college with the MBA. I went through being a consultant in Silicon Valley, where I am, to corporations, doing a lot of counseling for people. So it's only now. Oh, and I recently came out with this energy that I've been channeling for a number of years, that I'm able to support people in an energetic manner because I've gone through a lot of physical discord, particularly in my 70s. And several different doctors have told me that I'm an energy healer. So I started to use the energy that I've been using on myself to survive, started to share it with others. And as late as yesterday, people tell me that it's a very powerful energy. And I thought it was just my energy within me. So I'm here in the learning process, in the evolving process, in the gifted process. I think I'll stop here. But you ask me questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for your origin story. Thanks for sharing about the walk-in experience. And thanks for coming out of the quote unquote spiritual closet. It's a really freeing experience. And the more of us that talk about our experiences, the more we give other people courage to talk about theirs. So thank you again for your courage. I really appreciate it. I'm wondering if maybe you can share a little bit about what some of the integration tools were that you found for yourself.
Oh, very good. I never thought about them as tools. Oh, wow. I have a laundry list. Okay. I began with meditation. I was guided. Everything is in my life today. Everything is totally guided. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know when to brush my teeth. Guided. Okay. So I went into I was guided to go into a meditation program. And within that program, I started to do past life regression, rebirthing, and becoming aware of ego. I never had a clue I even had an ego. I didn't even know what ego was, and still learning. From that, I was guided. My mother had passed, and I don't know which to tell you first. Okay, so I came into a small inheritance, and I was thinking of doing a PhD at that point. And my spiritual teacher at that point, I was speaking with her, and I said, I didn't know what to do. And she said, well, Carol, it was her, she would go do a PhD in transpersonal psychology. I said, what's that? And she said, exactly what you've been doing. I said, okay, that's what I'll do. Where should I go? So she told me to go to ITP, Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, here in Menlo Park. They no longer exist. Now it's called Sophia University. So I came here and I did transpersonal work, learning how to be a psychologist, which is really the base of my life today. And from there, I started to do business consulting using the tools and techniques of transpersonal psychology. And I will add, one of the biggest pieces I have since then and all through the years is Dreamwork. Exceptional tool for discovering, knowing, being aware of self from the past to the present to the possibilities of the future. Exceptionally strong. Journaling, strong. What else? Breathwork. I forgot this. I did breathwork, holotropic breathwork with Stanislavski Grof. He has become in the history books now, the father of transpersonal psychology. And he taught the ancient knowing of how to use the breath to cleanse and heal the body. So I did a lot of work with him. And in one case, I was lying on the floor with about 175 people, listening to the music, very dynamic, changing music, breathing into it to move out of the body and heal the soul, really. And I kept breathing and breathing and breathing. I loved it. I wound up in the white light. I did not want to come back. Only it took a team of people to bring me back very gently. So I got to experience beyond the veil, never having died. Because the body was still breathing, and I was up in the unknown space. It was magnificent. A few months later, I was doing breath work myself in meditation. I was sitting in agony. And I was breathing and breathing by myself, and I got to the white light again. Only there was no one there to bring me back, and I got frightened. So I let go quickly. And in that process, I crashed into the body, as opposed to the first time when I was gently brought back into it. So it took me months to recuperate from that. My recuperation, I went into meditation originally because all I wanted to do was be closer, to feel closer to my perception of God. That has been at the root of me and still is. My perception has changed over the years. My practice has become deeper and deeper and deeper. And so the tools, basically, those are my basic tools. I have worked with many different kinds of spiritual teachers. I have studied world religions. I have to have a certificate in world religions. And I have learned to listen in a way that I never knew before. And I will say, when it came to doing my dissertation, I sat with one of my professors who knew me. I asked him, what do you think I ought to do my dissertation on? And he said, well, do it on what you know best. I couldn't think of what I knew best. And he said, intuition. And I thought, he knows that I'm intuitive. I didn't know anybody knew that I was intuitive. And so I spent the next couple of years exploring, how do I use my intuition in order to go interview business professionals? How do they use their intuition? And I wrote a dissertation on intuitive consciousness amongst operational managers. I finished my dissertation when I was 73, because I stopped teaching when I was 67. I have been doing research, and COVID got involved in this in the past few years. I have been doing research on a broad array of subjects to enhance my original research on intuitive consciousness. So I have become a writer. I have become a spiritual teacher. I have become somebody I don't even know. It's like every day, new information comes to me with the Dreamwork. I wake up in the morning and find dreams written on my bed. We are receiving information 24/7, I'm sure you know. So it's like there's always newness coming. There's always newness. And recognizing in the horribleness that's going on in the world today, there is the newness that is evolving at the same time. And that's where my focus is, to address the newness and support people to address the positiveness within themselves, because I know the journey now. I know the journey. At least I think I know the journey. Of course, every day I learn more about the journey, more possibilities. So
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Carol. I'm wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit more about the walk-in itself. Have you been able to, do you communicate with your higher self? Do you know the soul that was in you before versus the soul that's in you now? Or what's that process like?
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you for asking. Yes. Do I know? First of all, I walked in 82. By 5 years later, it would be 87, higher consciousness came to me in a meditation, neon lights, Ilama. I didn't know what a lama was. I had to go find out. So yes, I am communicating with higher consciousness 24/7 at this point. It's what brought me to you in this moment. The actual experience, the moment of the walk-in, I already gave voice to it. It was a moment. It was an instant. It was like, that was it. It happened in the what do you call it, in a nanosecond, whatever. I mean, it was a moment. It was like out of time, out of space, just in a moment. And when it happened, I immediately knew what happened, because I read the book like months before, thinking that could never happen. That's not possible. I lost the point of your question. Tell me again. I get very emotional. I'm wild. I'm wild. Oh yeah, I did enormous, and still going, enormous inner child work.
Mm.
So I'm in this 83 body. Now, this is weird. I'm in this 83 body with the energy that came in 42 years ago, did all this inner child work. I'm a widow. I live alone since almost 40 years. And I'm as playful as can be. I have such a good time with me. I'm highly challenged when I go out because I'm very empathetic, as you can imagine. And I was as a kid. Oh, well, now I get your question. Yes. Okay. Now I got your question. Well, I bounce around. Okay. There were signs that the present energy was operating at moments in the original energy. By that, when I say energy, I mean soul. Carol in this speaks of sacred contract. Of course, I didn't read it then, read it since. Where and I'm sure you know this, and the viewers may know this as well, we are contracted before we contract with souls before we come into body. So I had a contract agreement, so I have found out, because I've worked with many different kinds of psychic people, that I had a contract prior to coming into this body to go through whatever I went through with this feeling of less than, to learn about that essence of feeling the depth of self-loss. And once I went through, allowed the new energy to come in, the walk-in, I was able to reflect back on the experiences of the past, because the new energy, the present soul, in the body has cellular consciousness. So I had to deal with all the same issues as I did when I was in the original, only with a different viewpoint, with a different perception. So in there goes the learning, and the learning is all about soul development. That's what we're here for, soul development. So I'm in process, always and forever in process, and always getting guided, and always, I could brush my teeth and suddenly I get a message and I have to go find a piece of paper.
Let me ask you, what is the soul development for? What are we developing to?
Ah, lovely. The object of my existence now, right? How to become more conscious, how to become more aware of what really is. And interestingly enough, yesterday, trying to prepare for this, for the first time ever, I did research on a walk-in. I loved it. It was like they were describing me. I felt so validated. Purpose. Walk-ins, people who have had near-death experiences, people who are connecting with the non-physical world. And we are embodied. We're here to support people, as I read it, as I've been told, as my dreams tell me, as my meditations tell me, as everybody tells me who I'm dealing with. To support people to move out of their fear into their greater, higher knowing. And yesterday I found something really lovely, which I really didn't know the words until yesterday. To support people to move out of their 3 lower chakras. The energy system that we have within our body, the chakra system. The 3 lower chakras are personal development. Once we get into the 4th, now there are 7 basic chakras. Once we get into the 4th chakra, which is the heart, we start to, the heart. We start to move into possibilities of connecting with our higher consciousness. Higher consciousness goes beyond ego. Higher consciousness, ego does not exist. It's not about self, it's about others. It's about contributing and supporting those who are in different situations than ourselves, let's say. Supporting the collective. I recently, I write different programs and I give workshops. What came to me recently was, I think I might have shared it with you, speaking about what I've been dealing with here, is soul exchange. What is the soul exchange? It's moving from the dark, from the pain of, in my case, it was emotional, challenging, into the light. I feel like living in the clarity and the comfort of being in life now. I've never experienced life as wonderfully as I experience it today. And mind you, I'm not financially set yet. I'm working toward that. Maybe I will be, maybe I won't be. That's like, I think, my last piece. I'm not sure. So it's a matter of the soul exchange is about soul. Long story short, right?
Okay, thank you for that. So I have I have at least one more question. I know that through years of integration and seeking and, dialing into your intuition, there's got to be like some great spiritual message. Like you said, you give workshops. So there's stuff that you teach. I just want to give you some space maybe to share about some of those thoughts.
Desire, determination, trust. Then it's going into, listen, ask the question. What do we want to address? Most people don't even know what they want to address. If we can clarify and be quiet, I guess the first thing is to quiet the mind, the thinking mind. That's where meditation comes in. To quiet the thinking mind. Thinking mind is going 24/7. Most people, when they sit down to meditate, I know I was the first time as well. Oh, I can't meditate. My mind is going to me. My mind is mind chatter. First piece. How do we quiet the mind? Once we quiet the mind on a consistent basis, we give ourselves, we open ourselves up to more of opportunities to inquire into the intuitive process. If I ask, what do you think I ought to do now? And let go of it. All I have to do is listen. Sooner or later, I'm going to get an answer what I should do now. Trust it. How many people I know who receive a lot of insights, or they receive dreams, and they don't trust them. It breaks my heart. It's like we're not acknowledging our essence. We're not acknowledging the part of us that feeds us every day. So, what did you ask me? I get lost, don't I? It's so fun.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to see about some of the spiritual information that you have, and you answered it perfectly. So thank you. So the last thing that I have that I want to ask is about the spiritual coming out. What would you say to somebody who's feeling frightened about coming forward and sharing about their experiences?
Oh, yes. Oh, wonderful first question. Because I almost didn't do it here today. Trust your guidance. Trust your guidance. If somebody is operating with spiritual consciousness, they need to honor that part of themselves that supports them for the positiveness of life. Trust your guidance, whether it be an insight in the shower or something that hits you while you're driving or whatever it may be. Trust your own power. I have found that is the greatest challenge. How do I accept that I can do what I can do? That's the learning. The more we step into it, the more empowering we are to ourselves. And the more we become what we are kind of shying away from, but we know it's the best part of ourselves. That's the key, the best part of ourselves. How do we step into it and own that extreme, strong, steady, loving power? I mean, I sign love all the time. You know how many people are not comfortable to send their love in an email? Oh, yeah. Share your heart. Open up to your heart and share it.
Well, Carol, I'm so grateful for your willingness to come and share your story with our community here at IANDS. I just want to see if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about our time together today.
Okay, since you asked. Two things, just sayings. And everybody knows this. Energy flows where attention goes. So many people don't get that. Energy flows where attention goes. Where are you putting your attention? Hello, that's one. Another piece that I love that I got from my spiritual teacher many years, she was a shaman. I walk the mystical path with practical feet. I walk the mystical path with practical feet. I have an MBA in business, practical feet. I have a PhD in transpersonal psychology, mystical. I'm much happier today in the mystical. The practical is like, okay, I can do this, boom, boom, boom. To walk the mystical path with practical feet is to live with higher consciousness, grounded in here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Carol. So lovely to connect with you. I'm so grateful for you. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.